So 1 month into 2020, and the nation appears to be more divided than ever. In January, March for Life, the Women's March, and a pro-gun rally in Virginia all took place. Sorry.
It's all right.
Overly dramatic
There's a lot of stuff going on.
So all those protests took place within 7 days. So New York Times national correspondent Sabrina Tavernise interviewed protesters at all 3 of those demonstrations, and she got a look at the political polarization and just how some Americans are struggling to pick a side.
And Sabrina joins us now from Washington to discuss. So Sabrina, this is really interesting. 3 different protests, 3 different causes, but one significant connection. What'd you find?
So the connection was really these people are partisans. They are very, very, very concerned and activated about politics right now. And you know, you would think that everybody in the country is, since we have Iowa today, and you know, politics is all that a lot of us are talking about. But actually, if you step back and look at the larger country, most people are not into politics. They don't follow politics. A majority do not. So these were the folks who do. And my curiosity was, you know, what is driving them? Where are they? Where are their heads right now in America? And what I found was this really deep sense of almost cultural panic at the thought of the other side winning in 2020. You know, and the Women's March, the marchers there said they were extremely afraid at the thought of Trump winning a second term, and the gun rally in Richmond, you know, just absolutely, people were saying, I can't imagine what our country would look like if Trump didn't win. I'm really, really scared.
I'm glad you sort of clarified the difference between sort of the rest of the country versus the people who feel so passionately about these issues that they're taking to the streets, right? But one of the things that we certainly noticed in the loose dialogue, particularly online, when people talk or write or tweet about the other side, the language is so extreme. I'm wondering what you noticed when you talked to the protesters. How did they view the opposing side or the people with opposing views?
So it was very, very interesting. I would say that, you know, for the most part, I would say that many of them in the crowd were afraid of the other side. Not all of them. It tended to, there were patterns among the conservatives and patterns among the liberals. I would say that for the liberals, the younger the person, the less likely that person was to know someone from the opposite political affiliation, and the more likely they were to assume that the other side was going to be harmful for the country. The other side was bad. The other side had it out for them. You know, on the conservative side, I think it was sort of the opposite. It was the older folks who were more rigid politically, were more likely to be afraid and expect the worst from the other side. Whereas younger conservatives, you know, were out in the world more, were bumping up more against people with different political views than their own. So, but there was definitely a significant, I would say, minority in each one of those crowds of people who really were seeing the other side as a bad force, a force that was wishing harm, was doing harm to the country.
You know what I find interesting, though, Sabrina, is that in my discussions with political analysts and with voters, when you talk to Democrats, they say, look, President Obama dealt with this too. The opposition consistently said, President Obama is going to take away our guns. That didn't happen, right? The boogeyman image that the opposition tends to paint of one party versus the other, in the case of the last administration, did not hold. Whereas in this case, they'll say to me, the president has implemented a travel ban. He has talked about building a wall. He has used derogatory terms in talking about immigrants. So when you talk to some of these folks who, when they were asked to imagine President Trump winning in 2020, what did they have to say about that? The fact that for some people, President Trump does represent exactly what he says he's going to represent. And in other instances, the imagery painted of, for example, Democrats of one who is godless and wants to take guns away never actually materializes.
So you mean you're saying the people who were, say, in the Women's March, for example? You mean on the liberal side?
Exactly.
So, you know, they are yes, you're right that some of these policies have real bite, and perhaps could be undone by a Democratic president who comes next, but are having actual effect on people's lives. And they did name some of those. I'm thinking of a yoga teacher I talked to from Virginia Beach who said that her extended family was Hispanic, and they had great concerns about deportations and some real policies the president has implemented. But on the other side, I understand. I mean, the gun issue is complicated, but Virginia, if you look at the politics of Virginia, Virginia had this really kind of landmark victory of the Democrats in November, which kind of has tilted the state pretty much. I wouldn't say permanently to the left, but, Virginia is practically a blue state now. And so these people from the southwest corner of the state and the rural areas, when they're looking at their state politics and they're seeing, Democrats passing legislation, relatively moderate legislation on guns that would be appealing to people in suburban areas, but still, they are easily politically aroused, and that's sort of an added thing in Virginia that I think is gives some bite to their concerns.
Really fascinating reporting.
Yeah.
Sabrina Tavernise of the New York Times. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.